All right. Thanks so much for being on this podcast. I appreciate it. My first question that I have for you is, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you started in the work that you do today.
Hi, Les. So thank you so much for having me. So I am a hypnotherapist and a psychoanalyst, and those are really big words, but I basically work with the subconscious, so our automatic responses. Everybody knows about automatic responses that we have in terms of we breathe without thinking about it, you drive because it's kind of learned memory, cycling, all of these physical stuff that's just in your subconscious. You learn it once and then people call it muscle memory. What people don't realize is we also have emotional muscle memory. So how we respond to things are in ways that we're not aware of. So if you one example that's really easy to see is money. So people will try to save, but they just can't. And they spend or they go on binges or they'll save, and they'll go on binges. The same thing with eating, you'll go on a diet, but then you'll break the diet one day. And it's almost like subconscious the sabotage, and you get so frustrated with yourself because it's not conscious. It's something that maybe you saw in childhood. Food was a form of love, or you didn't have a lot of money growing up. So whenever you get it, there's like an automatic urge to just spend it. And so I work with those kind of emotional urges. How I started doing what I do is actually I had a very different life. I was working in consulting in Accenture. And during the pandemic, it became really sad because a lot of the work that we were doing was basically redundancies. Um, and I just wanted to do something different. I got an opportunity to train in hypnosis, and I've just been doing it ever since. Yeah, I just wanted to do something more happy
hmm
rather than
So tell
bring
me a little
bad
bit
news.
about the work that you do as a hypnotherapist, because I've had another hypnotherapist on the podcast, and she was explaining to me that when you're doing hypnotherapy, it's sort of like it's like when you know how when you sleep that there are these sorts of patterns that goes alpha beta delta theta, that kind of thing. So that's what stuck with me.
Yeah, so that's a really good kind of way to, those are the brain waves. So when you, so there's a brain wave called theta, which is a specific brain wave that we use in hypnosis, and people use different techniques to get there. It's also the same brain wave you have when you're meditating, and it's a super creative brain wave. You have access to a lot of memories. And the whole point of this being is to just reprocess memory. So you have more access, you have more distance. Um, it's like a focused mind space. So people automatically get into hypnosis oftentimes when they're really focused. So when you're reading a book and you're really focused, you can, lose sense of what's going on around you. That is also hypnotic brainwave. So it's not necessarily, I think people say it's a trance or you kind of go off somewhere, or somebody has control over your body, you don't remember. It's not like that. It's more like a very focused brain space. And yes, it is the theta brainwave, and it's a brainwave almost between awake and asleep. So very often that's the brainwave that's responsible for people will say, oh, in the morning you have really good ideas, or you suddenly get this eureka moment. That's that brainwave.
hmm What about your work as a psychoanalyst? What's that all about?
So it's also working in the subconscious, but in so when you're working in hypnosis, you're in an altered mind space. Like you spend some time inducting somebody to breathe in, breathe out, kind of get into that really relaxed headspace that's, objective kind of mind space. And then you about memories, experiences, feelings, emotions. In a psychoanalysis, you are still working with the subconscious, but you're in the conscious. Um, the person is more aware or awake. So you'd work with dreams, you'd work with patterns of speech. You say, okay, for example, slips, or you'd work with defenses. So when somebody's getting really angry about something, be like, oh, I just said something. Why are you getting angry? Or you'd work with just patterns of behavior that you notice and point out, but you're conscious. So um, it takes a bit longer when you're not in hypnosis to come to those conclusions, but it still leads to awareness.
So tell me a little bit about the modalities that you use both in Um, a psychoanalyst and in hypnotherapy.
So a little, so what exactly do you mean by modalities? I just want to be sure.
Modalities, so like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, those kinds of common modalities that are heard in the mental health um field.
Space. Let me talk a little bit more about this because this is interesting. So, um, when I do work in hypnosis, it's typically like a 2 hour session. And what we use more than CBT we use because you get a recording at the end of the session. You're advised to listen to it um, every morning. It creates that neural pathway link, and you also kind of focus on behavior. So what would you want to change? And you kind of code that behavior into the recording. It's like a 10-minute recording after the session of, okay, this is what I'm doing. What would I like to do? But one thing that we use more is NLP, so language processing and kind of frame shifting into, so for example, if somebody believes, oh, um, I, I'm gonna just pick a random belief. I'm not safe to speak publicly. We change that into, I can speak. My heart is relaxed when I'm relaxed. Or the stress that I feel in my body before I go in front of a stage is actually excitement. It's not fear. Um, the reframing of that. So we use a lot of NLP more than CBT, a little bit of behavioral stuff in when I'm in a psychoanalytical kind of session, that session is not, it's very, very relational. So it's about the relationship that you're developing with your patient. You don't really use any sort of behavior modification or NLP or anything like that. It's more about helping people tolerate their pain, and kind of rebuilding a relationship. So very often we've had like damaging relationships or damaging experiences. And in this modality, it's more about fixing that through, for example, if somebody gets angry, very often people have breakages in relationships because they've got angry or they got hurt. So being able to tolerate somebody's anger and say, look, you can be angry, but I'm still here. I'm still going to show up week on week is deeply healing. So that's less about the behavior, less about the technique, and more about the relationship, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. My next question, I ask this to a lot of therapists, like when you meet in sessions with clients, how does it sort of usually start? And like, how do you make sure that patients are like understood, seen or heard? Because they can go through a lot of traumas and a lot of difficult experiences in their lives. So like, um, that's a two-parter. So start with like consultations and how that works, and then maybe dive into like your process for how to sort of help them, feel more comfortable with you when they're working with you, I guess.
Thank you. That's such an important question, Lazo, because so the first thing about this really is that there are some people that you will have a natural chemistry with just because of life experience, and there are some people who'll be able to relate to you more because of that. And there are some people you will not have that life experience, that chemistry with, or that understanding with, or that resonance with. And that's fine. But to build on that, you really need to listen. So there are kind of two parts to this. One, really developing the ability to listen. Um, I think very often there's so much noise, both externally, internally, and we have so much to say. We don't really know how to, okay, so what is somebody's story? What happened to them, why that happened to them. Like active listening is just deeply healing without putting in input, without analyzing, without advising. Just being there with somebody, I think, is the first step to building that alliance or that, strong relationship. And the second thing is your own therapy. So most therapists will be in therapy, especially if you're doing psychoanalysis, you will be in therapy multiple times a week. And the reason we do that is so that we don't project our stuff, because we're human beings, right? We've had a life, we've had triggers, we've had negative experiences. We do things well, we do some things badly. The main role of a therapist is not to control that stuff so that you can really be present for the patient, client, whatever word you want to use, person who comes in with like really deep pain and need. So you have to make sure your needs are being met, fulfilled, you're healthy, you're looking after yourself so that you can really um, look after them in that need, meet them with that need, and keep yourself and your stuff out of it.
Because I remember when I had my own therapy, I I at first I had a therapist who wasn't really relational, who didn't understand, what I was going through, who I felt didn't really connect. But this latest one that I had, she's neurodivergent, like I have. And she's very relational, which is very nice. So that's someone I could connect with on a deeper level. I don't know if you've had mental health therapy before yourself, but yeah.
Yeah, so again, like because I'm training to be a psychoanalyst, it takes I kind of live in New York, so it takes a little bit of time there. Yeah, I have we all have to be in therapy with basically for many, many years, couple of times a week. So yeah, but there's some people who just get you, and there's a natural chemistry there that you will not have with other people. And the relational approach is more um I don't know. So again, psychoanalysis is relational. It's just about understanding the human in front of you and not so much fixing. So that just, I think,
Hmm.
to your point, like it just creates more space to explore without judgment.
Yeah. What have you learned in doing this kind of work, both in the psychoanalysis part of this, but also the hypnotherapy side of things?
Um, so I think if you could boil it down, you learn so much, and there's so many pe wonderful people you meet. But the issue that we think is the issue is never the actual issue.
Hmm.
So I'll give you an example of somebody, this person who was trying to lose weight. And they were like, haha, I really want to lose weight. And I keep sabotaging, I keep overeating, and I keep doing these things. And many people will tell you this. So the issue that they came in was the weight, but the actual issue was a lot deeper. It was about feeling safe in romantic relationships. And they'd had so many heartbreaks and negative experiences and violations of their privacy in many ways that the weight was a way to keep romantic interest away because they
Hmm.
didn't feel safe falling in love. And so the issue that they thought was, oh, I just can't lose this weight and it's really frustrating me. But it was protective in a way. And so I find that fascinating. Every time we go into a session, it's something else. It's what do you think you have is something else completely. So for me, I started, again, hypnosis was introduced to me personally because I was also going through something. I was trying to um getting over a breakup and all of this. And I thought it was about the person and how this person was amazing. But when I did hypnosis, I realized that I went back to times in my childhood where my parents were really busy working and they had to leave me with my aunt, and there was a whole experience in my life. And a lot of that was about proving that I'm a good girl. And a lot of the reasons I held on to relationships was not because I was deeply in love or they were my soulmate or I made some story about it, but it was because I was trying to prove my that I'm a good girl. And it came just from experiences in childhood where I felt abandoned. I wasn't really abandoned. But so it's like whatever you think is your issue, it turns out to be something completely it's a different it's almost like the issue is a symptom of something that's deeper.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything that you'd like to learn more as a professional that you're like, I'm very curious about this or want to learn more about this on a deeper level?
So I recently have been working with a lot of survivors of just kind of different kinds of trauma, but a lot of it has been sexual in nature. Um, and there are words that we use in hypnosis or different kinds of things. And sometimes it's really difficult to talk about those experiences, especially when if they've happened when you're very, very young. You almost don't have the words at that time to describe. So I've been ex wanting to explore and learning more about somatics. So how do we work with when there are no words or when words are too painful or memories are too painful? Are there things that we can do with tapping, with the body, with I have a friend who's a dance movement therapist, so she encourages people to dance and move and scream and to get that sort of relief or release. So that's my new space where I don't know much about it yet. I'm still kind of dipping into the waters of how we bring the body more into our sessions, and what's happening in the body or just kind of body work.
Hmm. My next question is this, what was there some sort of mentor as you were, studying to become, a hypnotherapist or like a psychoanalyst that you thought, I could learn from this person or I want to be like this person one day?
Um, so there have been different people at different stages because with every stage you kind of meet more people and they're different. When I started, I there's a wonderful British hypnotherapist who's kind of created the modality that I use. So it combines NLP, hypnosis, psychoanalysis, a lot of things. So her name is Marissa Peer, and she has a training program that I started working on, and kind of that's what I graduated from. So she's pretty amazing. Um, as I've kind of moved through the work, there are like several people doing really, really good work. I think my supervisor personally is amazing in the way that they work with people long term over many years. So I think at each stage it's been different. It's been a different person.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is what sorts of tips or advice would you give to those who want to do what you're doing, who are studying, you know, want to study hypnotherapy or psychoanalysis, are working to get those licensure hours and like are trying to be what you're doing. So what tips or advice would you give to those who want to really be in that same position, I guess?
What I would say is that it is, so if you want, so in terms of, it's a really long, so there are two kind of, so psychoanalysis is a bit different. So let's start with hypnosis. Um, I think it's such a powerful modality and people don't really use it as much. So people will use EMDR quite a bit, and different sort of things. But I think hypnosis is something that's so, so powerful and it's so profound, the changes that you can see in people's lives. So there's so many good training programs out there. I think if you want to learn. Marissa Peer has rapid transformational therapy. That's pretty amazing. People train in different sort of schools, but I would just look up and see if you relate to one specific methodology or another. There's like timeline therapy. There's a whole bunch of things. So just like read up, see what you're called to. Like it's also quite intuitive of who you connect more with. I would also say like don't stop. So I did the hypnosis certification. I have colleagues who've done like five different types of hypnotic certifications because you're never really done. And the more you do, the more people you meet, the more you train, the more you kind of build a bigger community, and just kind of keep growing. The more you keep growing, the more you can offer to the people who come work with you. So yeah, I would say just start. It's not, it is a time commitment, but I think it's so worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, that was
Okie dokie. Alrighty.